Start streaming. Oh my goodness. Okay, hopefully this works. There we go. We've got the connection there. We're on a ridiculous delay though. Well, that makes sense. I think I put it as a ridiculous delay. Okay. And we're on. Doing checks and all that. Trying to make sure that everything is working properly while live. I think we're good. Okay, cool. All right, that's good. All right, so responding. It's kind of funny because talking to Team Rivalry folks trying to make sure the stream is working properly. You can probably see me texting him over here. Sound is great. Thank you. All right, appreciate it. There's probably a excellent delay going on there though. What is that noise? That's my MacBook. Oh my goodness. Oh, this has just been so much fun already. Minute and 30 seconds in, we've had all kinds of technical issues. Oh, excuse me. All right. So, I'm tired. It's kind of late. Pushing 9 o'clock. Got to turn the brain back on to talk some football. Had some errands to run, so that's why we're not getting to it until now. Yeah, okay, so we've got everything live. Wow, all right. So it is already, what is it? It's week 8. Week 8 in Big Ten football. Can't believe that we're already here. Definitely not the season I think most of us were expecting. I mean, certainly if you're looking at it from the point of view of a Michigan fan or, probably Michigan State fan, that game obviously coming up this weekend, which is that's going to be one of the biggest, I think the biggest that rivalry has ever seen. Video is good, but lightning is subdued. I should hope the lightning is subdued. I don't want to die. Do you mean lighting? Maybe I can turn the color. I can turn it up so that I've basically got the incandescent sun shining in my face. Hopefully that works. Okay. All right, so as the video title suggests, we're going to talk some James Franklin, see what's going on there. Then we're going to talk some Mel Tucker again, see what's going on there, because I think the two most interesting stories going on in the Big Ten right now are where two of its most high-profile coaches are going to be coaching next year. I know there has been talk about Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh's not going to LSU, nor is he going to USC. Maybe to the NFL if they want him back. But I don't know. I feel like he's got something good going on at Michigan right now, so you might want to stick around. All right, so let's start with our first story. Gonna go kind of quick tonight since it's already kind of late and I'm tired. All right, so in case you didn't see on Saturday, Penn State lost to Illinois. Now, so I'm first going to talk about that weird excuse for a overtime it was. So if I'm not mistaken, I'm not going to look it up. If I'm not mistaken, it is mistaken. So you play 3 regular overtimes, and then when you get to the 4th, you get 2-point conversions from there on out. So so basically what happened was, okay, so already the game shouldn't have been going to OT in the first place. The game is in Happy Valley. It's Penn State. Like, I get you lost to Iowa, but you lost to Iowa. Iowa's a pretty decent team until they played Purdue. So why the game is going to overtime in the first place is kind of beyond me, especially with everything they had in front of them. I mean, they still had the Big Ten in front of them. They could have made it for sure. So kind of have to wonder what's going on there. Now, I have some theories, and I'll get to them in a second. but the game is already going to overtime, which is a problem. So they play, what is it? They play 3 actual overtimes, and then after the third overtime, you play 2-point conversions, and that's it. You get 1 play. You get to try for a 2-point conversion, and that's it. So the game, I mean, they're billing it as the first ever 9 overtime game. No. So I think Alabama and Texas A&M, I want to say, went. No, who was it? I think it was Texas A&M 7 overtimes or something like that. 7. Texas A&M 7 overtime game. Who was that against? Finish off LSU. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So I was looking at looking at this game, and this game was insane. If you saw the highlights of it, it's an absolutely insane game. It was 7 actual overtimes. Like they started on the 20 and had to actually, or 25, and actually had to play overtime. Okay. For the Penn State Illinois game, they didn't have to do that. Overtime. Yeah, okay. Illinois stuns Penn State, number 7, in NCAA's first 9 overtime game. There's the highlights for you. So real quick, over the course of an unprecedented 9 overtimes, they're billing this like it's a big deal. But after the third overtime, you play 2-point conversions for the rest of the game. That's it. It's just 2-point conversions. So the 2-point conversion shootout, here we are, right here, you can see. The 2-point conversion shootout format was introduced in 2019, the season after LSU and Texas A&M played a 7 overtime game that left both teams badly beaten up. The rule was tweaked this year with the 2-point conversion possessions beginning with the third overtime instead of the 5th. So I get it. On the one hand, I kind of get it. On the other hand, I'm like, that's football. That's football. That's why you have, that's why it's such a good idea to build up your team's depth, to build up the depth chart of your team. That's why you do things like this, so that when the starters and the second stringers all get beaten up and stuff like that, you can put in your third and your fourth string guys. We've gotten too used to the idea in modern day football of the idea of the star player. And that's actually really, I think, hurt the sport, because now we have rules in place that are designed, I understand, to keep the players safe, but at the cost of actual competition. Okay, if you put Michigan and Ohio State up against each other in a 2-point conversion shootout, Ohio State doesn't win that game as much as they do. It's a 50-50 toss-up every time. Now, nothing against Illinois, but my gut tells me that if this game were 9 real overtimes, starting from the 20, Penn State wins. Penn State wears down Illinois and wins. Now, maybe that's not actually the case. Again, I don't want to take anything away from Illinois. You can't take anything away from this win. They had to take Penn State to overtime in the first place, and that's absolutely a big deal. But anyway, so yeah, I think that the new overtime format is kind of ridiculous and a little bit sad, honestly. I think that was it's another example to me of the NCAA trying to fix something that was never broken, and it's because they want that control. It's all about control these days with these types of things, and the NCAA is almost, they're governing in a way that makes me feel like they've got their tail perpetually stuck between their legs, like they're just tucking tail and hoping for the best. Yeah, it doesn't really make much sense. But anyway, that was the real story of that was the biggest story of the afternoon until James Franklin did his press conference. And I don't know for sure if this was the Monday press conference or if it was after the game. I think it was the Monday press conference or Tuesday, whenever they do them. And goodness gracious, James Franklin was gone. I mean, his mind was not where he was. He was not at that press conference in his mind, if you know what I mean. So this from Golf Digest, which I have questions as to why Golf Digest is writing about college football, but whatever. James Franklin has no idea who or where Penn State is playing this weekend. For the upteenth week running, the college football headlines are all about who will be the next head football coach at USC. On Tuesday, two of the biggest names currently attached to the job, Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin and Penn State head coach James Franklin, took to the podium to address the rumors. One of them did so with fire and conviction. The other, not so much. After an embarrassing home defeat to 24-point dogs Illinois on Saturday, Franklin was asked about his commitment to Penn State at his weekly press conference, which is absolutely a reasonable question at this point. Goodness gracious, I need a drink of water. I'm sorry. Had pizza for dinner. Homemade pizza. And it left me parched. It was delicious, though. This is absolutely a reasonable question at this point, because I've always thought Penn State, like James Franklin, had kind of the Jim Harbaugh problem without any of the media attention. Now, Jim Harbaugh early in his tenure at Michigan was very much a bombastic character. Like, he absolutely brought attention to Michigan, and that was probably the worst thing he could possibly do, because there would be all sorts of hype and then absolutely none of the backup. Well, I mean, I guess depending on how you look at it, because I think a lot of teams would kill to be where Michigan is right now, but such as it was. Anyway, James Franklin has kind of had this issue at Penn State where they're consistently like 9, 10, 11 win teams. And they have the one Big Ten championship, but they have no playoff appearances. Even Michigan State has a playoff appearance. Okay, they have, what, two-ish wins against Ohio State since James Franklin took over, I think. I really can't remember. Actually, we'll find out when we check out the team rivalry page here. But it's just kind of interesting to me that James Franklin gets very little hate for what he's done at Penn State, probably because he's got the one Big Ten championship and a win against Ohio State. But all in all, he's really actually been kind of a mediocre coach. And it's no disrespect. Penn State regularly takes down Michigan when Michigan's in a bad year, and, you know, vice versa. That's just kind of how those teams have worked. Now, would James Franklin be a good fit at USC? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's little to no chance he takes the LSU job, which I will get to in a second with Mel Tucker. But I think USC is a great job opening right now because of, honestly, how weak the Pac-12 is. I talked about this last week. James Franklin would be a good fit with the Pac-12, not just USC. And the reason is because James Franklin can take a bad team to a relatively good team, and in, you know, a couple of years, a great team. And the Big Ten, he's been able to do that in a Big Ten, which has for the last 10 years been consistently better-ish than the Pac-12. I think the Pac-12 has had a quality issue for quite some time now. You know, at least the Big Ten has regularly had Ohio State, Michigan State in the playoffs. Michigan State had the 1 year. At least they have a consistent playoff team. Pac-12 has had Washington and Oregon, and I think that's it. Twice, if I'm not mistaken. And then the SEC is obviously just the runaway favorite, winner, whatever. James Franklin could go to USC and make winners out of that program fairly quickly. So it makes sense. But anyway, with a huge tilt against fifth-ranked Ohio State on the schedule, Franklin meant to say that his focus was entirely on that big-time Big Ten rivalry. Say that 5 times fast. But couldn't even get the team name right. He said, quote, "My focus is completely on Illinois and this team and this program," Franklin told reporters. "I think I've shown over my 8 years my commitment to this university and this community, and that's kind of my statement." So, a couple of things here. First off, he says Illinois, not Ohio State. Now, I could stop for a second and be like, all right, they just played Illinois. His mind's probably on Illinois right now because he's probably frustrated that he just lost to Illinois, which anybody would be. I'm fairly certain Scott Frost was upset that they lost to Illinois. There you go. So the next thing is, though, is that he says, I think I've shown over my 8 years my commitment to this university and this community. That's a very generic statement. That is a very generic statement. That is a statement. It's like, there's a specific term for it. I can't remember what it is right now, but it's, I think I've more than shown that I'm right, or that I've shown my commitment to something. That's the type of thing that you say when you're trying to just come up with something on the fly to explain why why your mind isn't quite where it should be right now. That's the kind of thing that you say to do enough to get people off your back for a little bit because your mind is elsewhere, because your heart is elsewhere. So it really, honest to goodness, sounds like James Franklin. It sounds like his mind is not in Happy Valley. And I think Penn State's going to be fairly upset by the end of this year. Yikes. If that doesn't sound like a man in the middle of updating his cover letter, we don't know what does, but just wait, it gets worse. As we all know, the Ohio State Buckeyes play in a little place called the Toilet Bowl. Sorry, the Horseshoe. Excuse me. My bad. Sorry. They'd rather dissolve the program than call it the Big House, or call the Big House home. Franklin should know better. Franklin does know better. But if the multi-million-dollar question is whether or not he's distracted by the USC rumors, well, this seems to be the multi-million-dollar answer. And he absolutely is. And I can't blame him either. He's been at Penn State for 8 years. He has one Big Ten championship, no playoff appearances that I know of, a couple of victories over Ohio State, and Ohio State, there's nothing to suggest that Penn State will ever overtake them. And that's what it's going to have to be. Against teams with consistent success like Ohio State, you have to be Clemson. You have to be, well, not this year, but the last few years. You have to be Clemson. You have to be Georgia. And again, Georgia has its own issues in the SEC because every time they have a pretty decent team, they still somehow find ways to lose to Alabama or other teams. I remember they played in the SEC championship and then played again in the playoffs, right? And I think Georgia won the SEC championship, but then Alabama won in the national championship. So even Georgia can't fully overcome Alabama. I mean, think about that. Alabama's last game of the regular season was a loss, and they still made it to the playoffs. That's Ohio State. Okay, that's Ohio State. Ohio State this year could go 11-1. Maybe not 11-2, but they could go 11-1, get a Big Ten championship victory against, let's just say, no one in the Big Ten West looks very good. No one in the Big Ten. I'll just go with Iowa for right now because they've only got the one loss. They might end up with 2 by the end of this weekend. We'll find out. But they could beat Iowa in the Big Ten championship and be in. Penn State at this point has to win out. And if they beat Ohio State this weekend, they have to get one more team to lose, I'm pretty sure, because they've got 2 Big Ten losses. Even if they somehow or another made it to the Big Ten championship game and won, they still wouldn't be in. So they're nowhere near the level that Ohio State is at. Okay, they're not. So and there's no indication that James Franklin is going to have that team to the point where Ohio State is at anytime soon. So what does he do? Go somewhere where you could potentially be the Ohio State pretty quickly. Because, what's his name? Mario Cristobal at Oregon has that team doing very good things. But all it takes is for one other team. They already have a loss against, what was it, Stanford? Not a good team. Ohio State doesn't lose to unranked teams not named Purdue. So James Franklin has a much better chance of turning USC into the Ohio State of the Pac-12 than he does turning Penn State into the Ohio State of the Big Ten, or beating Ohio State, becoming as good as Ohio State. Okay, Jim Harbaugh's already got his work cut out for him at Michigan. And somehow or another, he finds ways to beat Penn State every couple of years, which just sets Penn State back even more. So then what? Then James Franklin's got to worry about Michigan. Well, now here's Mel Tucker with Michigan State. Now James Franklin's got to worry about Michigan State again. All the while, they just lost to Illinois. I'd probably be done at that point too. I'd feel like I've done just about everything I can do. Now, either he could become a Titan in one of the college football's best conferences ever with James Franklin, with Ohio State's head coach. Oh, crud. What's his name? Ryan Day, Jim Harbaugh, Mel Tucker, Brett Bielema back at Illinois. Scott Frost, if Nebraska keeps him around for another year and he does what I think he'll do next year if they keep him. And then Wisconsin's head coach, because they're good every few years too. So does he want to be one of the Titans in this conference, or does he want to win the conference more consistently? I think that he wants to win it more consistently. His behavior right now is that he wants to win more consistently. Anyway, so my money is on James Franklin being at USC by year's end, which brings me to the next interesting head coaching job in the Big Ten, or potential, I don't know, change, I guess you could say. 9:03. All right. So Mel Tucker responds to the LSU job speculation, which already means that the LSU job speculation has become serious enough that he felt the need to address it. On the one hand, you could say that if he didn't respond to it, maybe it's because he's not giving it a second thought. On the other hand, you could say, like, oh, he's not responding to it. That must mean there's something there. Goodness gracious, I'm thirsty. Very, very thirsty. That's a good microphone, too. I don't know if you guys can hear me drinking, but hopefully you can't. Okay. No college football head coach has seen such a step rise in his reputation these past few years than Mel Tucker. Michigan State could end up paying the price as a result. Now, this is also coming a couple of years after Michigan State backed up the Brinks truck in order to get Mel Tucker there in the first place. Mel Tucker with basically no meaningful resume. And I say meaningful not to disparage anything that he's done, because obviously he's doing something right, but meaningful as in he had one total year of head coaching experience before this, quote unquote, perennial Big Ten power that Michigan State, for whatever reason, thinks they have any right to be, to hire him. Hopefully that made sense. Tucker has been mentioned as a potential candidate in the LSU head coach search. We're not surprised. Tucker has worked miracles at Michigan State, they needed one, leading the Spartans to a 6-0 start to the season where they find themselves number 8 in the AP Top 25. They're overrated. Reporters questioned Tucker regarding the LSU rumors on Monday morning. He didn't have much to say other than the fact that he's solely focused on preparing for number 6 Michigan. Well, at least he got the name right. Looking at you, Franklin. It's worth noting that he didn't deny interest in the LSU job, though. Now, I hate phrases like this because this is absolutely leading journalism, which makes sense. I mean, the fine people at MSN here are not known for good sports journalism. It's worth noting that he didn't deny interest in the LSU job, though. Yeah, that might be because he didn't feel like he needed to. That might be because he felt like what he said was enough. On the other hand, it also might be because he's secretly interested in the LSU job. Quote, "My focus is on the upcoming game against the school down the road." Nice little dig there. That's where my concentration and my focus is, and I really appreciate you understanding that. Methinks one doth protest too much, maybe. Some college coaches would have a meeting with the team to address the coaching search rumors. Mel Tucker hasn't. This is kind of what makes me think that maybe he's thinking about the LSU job. Because everything that I just said about James Franklin not wanting to have to compete with Jim Harbaugh and Ryan Day every year goes for Mel Tucker too. Mel Tucker has to play Michigan every year. Mel Tucker has to play Ohio State every year. Mel Tucker has to play Nebraska every year, and they're getting better. They have to play Penn State every year, too. I mean, it gets tiring. Now, I have no idea why that he would go to the SEC. Maybe because he thinks that with an SEC team with a little bit more discipline, he could have LSU back up and running for a national championship soon. After all, we're only, 2 years removed from LSU's national championship? 2 or 3? There's absolutely some stuff on that team that could be morphed into another national championship team here very soon. And if he's half as good with the transfer portal down there as he is up here, something could happen. Now, he's going to need a lot more than just transfers at LSU, but that's a good way to become relevant very quickly. But who knows? Quote, he hasn't really said anything specific towards us, but I haven't heard one dude in the locker room anything about it. Spartan safety Xavier Henderson said Monday via 247 Sports. Quote, I saw it and took it with a grain of salt, really, because that's ... He's not worried about it right now, obviously. He's worried about this game. Oh, obviously. Obviously, he's worried about this game. Obviously. Quote, his full focus is on our preparation today and tomorrow. I wouldn't think about it too much. Okay. I'm going to think about it, though. Because, yeah, they're right. Let's be honest. Mel Tucker would be an absolute perfect fit for an LSU team in need of a stricter culture. LSU is absolutely in need of a culture change. Michigan State was, too. Post Antonio, for sure. And Mel Tucker did that, and he did that within a year. But let's also not pretend for a second like Mel Tucker wasn't at Colorado for more than a year. Nope, I said that wrong. Let's not pretend for a second that Mel Tucker was at Colorado for any meaningful length of time. There we go. Because he wasn't. It took 1 year, one mediocre year at Colorado for him to be considered for the MSU job, and he took it. And he took it and then had to go to a donors meeting where everyone said that his behavior was just weird, just off. He wouldn't talk to anybody. Mel Tucker has not talked to his team yet. That doesn't sound like a Mel Tucker kind of thing to do unless he's looking into something that he doesn't want you to know that he's looking into. I don't mean to be a perpetuator of rumors, but that's really all you can do with sports punditry. Take the rumors and run with them for a little bit. So I'll play with this for a second. Mel Tucker has absolutely made a point to say that he's a very expressive person. Very expressive. Always about culture changes. Always about a good, strict, disciplined culture. And yet he hasn't had a conversation with his team about this. He had a conversation, or at least you would assume, and I think it was reported that he did, he had a conversation with his players, or at least I wouldn't be surprised, to ask them to buy into the transfer portal people. Who was I hearing talk about this? I think it was Steve Dace. He probably had that conversation with his players talking about the transfer portal and all that, and making sure that his own players on the team were okay with him bringing in transfer portal players because they needed help and they needed that help now. And that's fine. But the point is that he's very expressive. He's very communicative. So the fact that he hasn't had a conversation with his team just yet about these rumors to dispel them, to gain the trust of his own team, is kind of interesting. And I got to believe that there are some players in that locker room who are looking at this like, well, gee, he was only at Colorado for a year and he jumped ship to join Michigan State. And now there's a chance that he could jump ship at Michigan State to go down to LSU. There was another coach who jumped ship at Michigan State to go down to LSU. Oh, what was his name? Trick Flaben? Was that it? So the reason I bring that up is because of this. I said when Mel Tucker first went to Michigan State, I made a point of noting that he was at Colorado for only 1 year. And the reason that's important is because it's already kind of a part of modern day college football culture that you never really know when your coach is going to move on to the next best school. I mean, that's the problem MAC schools have all the time. If a MAC school has one good year, Western Michigan has the 12-0 season in 2016. There was no question as to whether or not James Franklin was going to be there the next year. He wasn't. There was no question. Throughout the season, his name was being connected with all kinds of jobs. Some jobs that I thought would actually have been a step back. I can't remember what they are. I think Minnesota was actually one of them. Minnesota was such a dumpster fire. That's the point. Michigan State is kind of has that problem right now. They had a good decade under Mark D'Antonio, and I don't entirely understand why this is the case, but it sounds like they still haven't overcome that national perception of being a stepping stone school, which on the one hand is kind of hilarious because you look at what they've accomplished and you're just like, well, yeah, you're always probably, or from a national media perspective, it's not entirely their fault, but they're kind of going to always play second fiddle to Michigan, even when they're better than Michigan. That's just the point of the brand. That's what's going on right now. But here's the thing. Even at Michigan, no one's really sure if Harbaugh is going to be back next year or if he's going to be in the NFL. No one was sure from the get-go. 2015, he goes 10-2. Who's talking to him? What NFL team is talking to him? 2016, they had that really, really good season. The one loss to Iowa, I think they went 10-2 that season. They had the one loss to Iowa, and then the refs gave Ohio State that victory later that year. Who was talking to Harbaugh? Michigan State is still not looked at as a destination job. And I think a lot of it has to do with hangover from the prior administration's culture. I sound like a politician right now. A lot of it, I think, has to do with the way Mark D'Antonio left that team. It wasn't good. He did not leave that team in a good spot. And he waited to retire until after he got that bonus, which is just kind of a jerk move. So Mel Tucker had to come in and completely change the culture, and it's working so far. I wonder if he's as surprised as the rest of us are that Michigan State's 7-0 right now with a chance to beat another top 10 team. Who knows? But he might be looking at LSU right now as that destination school with a brand, with a solid recruiting pipeline, and more money. Most likely to hire other coaches because he's making bank at Michigan State, right? He's making more money than he deserves to be making at Michigan State. I don't care what their record is right now. He does not deserve that paycheck right now. At the end of the year, if they're still having a good season, he deserves that paycheck. Right now, he does not. But LSU, he could probably deserve that paycheck after the first year. Anyway, my money is on Mel Tucker to be... No, it's not. Who knows? It could go either way, and I wouldn't put money on that because the over-under is not in a place that I would like it. Alrighty, so with that being said, let's get to some picks. We've got 7 games to go over. I'm going to try and go over them in 5 minutes or so. How's everybody doing in chat? I saw we had a few views. That's pretty cool. Oh, grab one more sip of water and then we'll get to it. It's good stuff. Water is so refreshing. All right. So, we're going to look at some Week 9 Big Ten games, and we're going to get some picks in. All right, we're going to save Michigan State for last because, duh. Let's get the dumbest game of the week out of the way. Let's go. Yeah, here we go. Nebraska versus Purdue. Where is it? There it is. Excuse me. Goodness gracious. I'm getting gas bubbles. All right, Boilermakers at the Cornhuskers. Duh. So this is Nebraska's last chance. This is Nebraska's last chance for the season. Now, the reason this is Nebraska's last chance for the season is because Purdue is the last team on their schedule. I'm going to look this up real quick as I'm saying it just to make sure I'm not being an idiot here. They're the last team on their schedule that they have a chance at beating that has done anything worth noting. And what I mean by that is Purdue beat Iowa, and that's a big deal. Otherwise, Purdue has 3 losses, 2 of them being in the Big Ten, so they're irrelevant, technically speaking. Although, actually, I think they're still in the race for the Big Ten West because the Big Ten West is that bad. So Nebraska, Scott Frost especially, they've got to be desperate for something. They need to get a win here. They get a win here, and then they have to play Ohio State, Wisconsin, and Iowa. How many of those games are they winning? Theoretically, they could beat Wisconsin. Wisconsin's down on their luck this season. They're not looking that great on offense. Nebraska could outscore them. Maybe because Wisconsin's defense is pretty good. Iowa's defense is also pretty good with getting the turnovers. What is the best thing that Nebraska does? Turn the ball over. Worst thing. I was being ironic. So the difference is, though, is that Nebraska has 246 points so far this season. That's good. That's very good. And that's why they need to get the win against Purdue. And I think that they will. I think Nebraska will pull it out. They're currently favored. They're favored by just over a touchdown. They're scoring 30 points a game. They're allowing 19, but they're turning the ball over at the exact wrong time. If they can take care of the ball, they'll get the win. Purdue is kind of hung over from that game against Iowa, and you could tell because they got pasted by Wisconsin. I don't know if they'll get pasted by Nebraska or just beat badly, but I think that Nebraska will win because Nebraska will be desperate. So we've got, what is this? Iowa at Nebraska. Purdue at Nebraska. Jeez. Purdue, Nebraska. And I'm going to give Purdue, I'm going to give them 14 points, and I'm going to give Nebraska 24 points. Yeah. So Nebraska, I think, is going to win that game 24-14. And let me real quick get the team rivalry score. I had them at one point. Oops. Well, what happened here? Oh, that's right. I forgot. Here we go. Whoops. There's my telegram for you guys to all see. What happened to... Oh, crap. There it is. Oh, boy. All right. This is going well. Okay, team rivalry scores. I have them here. Looking for them. I mean, I did anyway. Where'd they go? Here they are. All right. What were we just talking about? Purdue and Nebraska. Okay, so I call it 24-14. Nebraska. The team rivalry call is Nebraska 35-10. A lot of love for Nebraska's offense there. Yeah. I don't disagree with that call. I just think Purdue is going to realize somewhere around halftime that they could have been good, and so they might need to grab at least one or two more scores, and then Nebraska will just kind of take it from there and have a good fourth quarter. But who knows? Who knows what will happen? I know what will happen. All right, so next let's talk about Minnesota and Northwestern. I'm not going to talk about this. Minnesota and Northwestern. They're playing at 3:30. Minnesota's 5-2. Northwestern's 3-4. Northwestern's out of the running for the Big Ten championship team or game at this point. They've got the 3 losses. Minnesota's still in it. Minnesota is very much still in the running for a Big Ten championship, which, good for them because they started the season with a pretty solid loss, and they've bounced back. They have the only other loss being to Bowling Green, which is ridiculous. This is utterly ridiculous. But then they started winning somehow or another. So yeah, I mean, good on them. They lose to Ohio State. That was only a 14-point loss though. So, there was something there. And then they have a close game against Miami of Ohio. Not sure how that works. Destroy Colorado. Not sure how that works. And then lose to Bowling Green State. Not sure how that works. Barely beat Purdue. I'm kind of understanding how that's working now. Barely beat Nebraska. Understand that too, because Nebraska's not that bad. And then Maryland, they run over Maryland. So Maryland had a good start to the season too, and then they turned the ball over against Iowa 6 times and have lost it. So Minnesota against Northwestern. Northwestern started winning some games and then had a good first half against Michigan, but then fell apart. So we'll see how they bounce, if they can bounce back with this game. But I think Minnesota's on a mission because they still have their season in front of them. So I'm going to call Minnesota. What's the current line? Minnesota by a touchdown. Over-under is 43.5. Yeah, I got Minnesota, let's call it 27-14. 27-10. All right, moving right along. We have up next. Whoops. What happened to my scores here? There we go. Indiana at Maryland. This game is relatively irrelevant. Say that 5 times fast. Neither team has anything resembling a shot at the Big Ten championship game right now. Maryland's favored by 5. They're scoring 28 points a game. Indiana's allowing 30. So Indiana's scoring 20, but Maryland's allowing 30. Man, this is a game between two very bad teams. So bowl eligibility still on the line for both of these teams. We'll see if they care about that right now, because I think Indiana was beginning the season looking at Ohio State like maybe they actually had a shot. They had a shot last year. I think they could have had a shot this year. Not really sure what happened. Yeah, I'm going to take Maryland. Maryland over Indiana. This game is at Maryland, isn't it? Yeah, so I'm going to take Maryland over Indiana, and I'm going to make it, let's see, I think Maryland's going to win 28 to, no, that's going to be higher than that because Indiana's defense isn't very good. So I think it's actually going to be 35, Maryland 35, Indiana 27. Indiana 28. We'll give them that extra point. No missed extra points here. Rutgers at Illinois. Let's look for the team rivalry call. Did I call Minnesota Northwestern for team rivalry? Minnesota Northwestern. So I called 27-10. The team rivalry call is 28-14. Wow, nice. Maryland and Indiana. I called 35-28. Maryland. Team rivalry call is Maryland 24-21. Okay, and then looking up next at this Rutgers-Illinois game. Not too excited about this one, but man, Illinois has got to be riding a high right now. Yeah, geez. Rutgers started 3-0. Can you believe it? I had 3-0, and they gave Michigan all they had, and apparently literally all they had because they've had nothing left. The current spread is Rutgers by 1.5, so it's basically a take-your-pick kind of game. Yeah, it's at Illinois, and Illinois is riding the win streak right now, and a pretty solid win streak as it is. It's only one, but it's against a top 10 team, so it's a win streak, especially for Illinois. I'm going to give Illinois the win. Let's see, Rutgers at Illinois. I'm going to call Illinois 24 to Rutgers. Let's call it 17. Yeah, that sounds about right. No, it's going to be a little higher than that. I got Illinois 31-24. I think that's a better score. See, I judge these things based off of how I think their offenses are going to perform, and I have a hard time figuring out how the defense is going to perform because, like, Illinois' defense held Penn State to 18 points over 9 overtimes. But they gave up 24 against Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's offense isn't as good as Penn State's. You would think. I'm pretty sure. But who knows anymore. The team rivalry call for that one is Rutgers 21, Illinois 17. I think that was literally my original call. That's pretty hilarious. Number 9, Iowa at Wisconsin. This is a make it or break it kind of game. Make it or break it? Make or break game for Iowa. Where is it? Here it is. So Iowa at Wisconsin. 2 weeks ago, I would have thought this would be a kind of a no-brainer. Wisconsin's not playing very well, but all Iowa did was lose to Purdue, and now all of a sudden Wisconsin's back in play, especially if Wisconsin can get a win here. If Wisconsin gets a win here, then all of a sudden they're right back in the conversation for a Big Ten West title and for a trip to Indianapolis. That's kind of a big deal. Iowa hasn't had much of an offense of late. And right now, the line is Wisconsin by 3.5, which is crazy because the two teams have had wildly different seasons. Wisconsin's defense, though, only allowing 18 points a game with 223 yards per game. So fairly stout. Not too bad at all. It's just, it's things like this. It's, giving up 14 points to Army, which actually kind of makes sense. They're pretty good. They've shut out Illinois, but then the week before that, they got blown out by Michigan and then blown out by Notre Dame. And a lot of that was the offense's fault because of turnovers and stuff like that. But they didn't actually turn the ball over that much against Michigan, at least not for any scores. Michigan just went ahead and ran them over anyway. So they've had a pretty good defense. It's the offense that's been having some trouble, and it's Iowa's defense that's keeping them in games. So I think Iowa is going to win this game and come back and start to rebuild after the Purdue loss. I mean, even Ohio State takes a loss to Purdue and still goes on to win national championships on some odd reason. I don't understand how that works at all. But yeah, I don't think that this is going to be a high-scoring game because Iowa's offense is also not incredibly good. 28 points per game right now. It's that 14.6 that they allow on defense that's the big deal there. So, all right, let's go ahead and call Iowa. I'm going to say Iowa 24, Wisconsin 17. Yeah, let's do that. The team rivalry call is Iowa 24, Wisconsin 21. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that too. All right. Now we're going to talk Penn State at Ohio State. Penn State at Ohio State. Ohio State plays in the big house. What are you doing, Franklin? What are you doing? All righty. So we're looking at... So Ohio State is currently a 18.5 point favorite against Penn State. And if anything told me that James Franklin probably wants to get out of Happy Valley and go to USC, it's that. And that goes right along with what I was saying, that he's probably feeling right now like he's never going to have Penn State to the level of Ohio State. And there is no Ohio State equivalent in the Pac-12 right now. I understand Oregon got the win at Ohio State, no less. But Ohio State was struggling. They were not hitting their stride. Ohio State hits their stride and plays some better defense, they probably win that game. Maybe by a lot even. But they didn't. And that's football. That's what happens. But the point is that Penn State always has to play Ohio State once Ohio State's hit their stride. That's why, everybody says, you don't front load your seasons. Play the bad teams in the front so that you can get the kinks worked out by the time you get to the back end of the season. My thing is I don't know, just practice harder during the offseason. Play Ohio State first game of the season. You might beat them. I mean, Michigan and Ohio State were originally scheduled to play first game of the season in 2020 when they brought out that first edition of the 10-game season. I think it was the first game of the season. It was within the first couple of games. And I was like, that might actually be a really good thing for Michigan. Because they have the first couple of games and we avoid the late season meltdown. We either get the meltdown out of the way and then they have a good rest of the season, or not, which was kind of the case because they melt down against Michigan State and then sucked the rest of the year. But, whatever. Anyway, so there's no way that Penn State wins this game. And if they do end up winning this game, then I don't know. I guess Armageddon's on the way. I don't know. I don't see how Penn State has everything in front of them, but they need Ohio State to take 2 losses. So are they going to give them one of those losses and then look at, either Michigan or Michigan State for that second loss? I don't know. That's a heck of a lot to hang your hat on right now for Penn State. So where's the morale of that locker room right now? I don't think it's very good. I think that they're looking at the headlines like, hey, we just lost to Illinois after 9 overtimes. Well, more like 4.5 overtimes. Not even. I hate this new format. They've got 2 losses in a row. There's nothing that suggests that they right the ship against Ohio State, but crazier things have happened. But I'm not here to predict the crazy. I'm here to go with what my gut tells me and hope that I make it out of the weekend with a winning record. So I'm going to take Ohio State to win. Penn State at Ohio State. Ohio State's going to win 42-21. It'll be interesting in the first quarter, maybe even the first half, but not beyond that. Thoughts and prayers to our friends in Happy Valley. And last but not least, the team rivalry score for that one. Yeah, I agree with that. Ohio State 31-7. I think Penn State will score a few points. Now I'm regretting that though. They're not going to score any points. This might be a shutout. I'm going to laugh if this is a shutout because I have no soul and no empathy for people who can't remember their opponents on a week-to-week basis. Anyway, all right, so it's number 6 Michigan at number 8 Michigan State. I believe this is the second time in the series since 1960-something or another that both teams have been ranked in the top 10. Michigan currently leads the series 71-37 with 5 ties. This is the 114th meeting. Michigan has outscored their opponents 263 to 100 points so far this season. Michigan State has outscored their opponents 240 to 131. Jim Harbaugh's record at Michigan is 53-21, respectable. I know a lot of Michigan fans are going to hate me for saying that, but he's got a plus 70% win percentage, so stop. A lot of teams would kill for that. Stop. Okay? Versus Michigan State, he's 3-3. Not fantastic, but those 3 losses have only ever come at Michigan Stadium. He's never lost as a player or a coach. This is what I learned today. He's never lost as a player or a coach at Michigan State, which is weird. Mel Tucker's record at Michigan State is 9-5 versus Michigan. He's 1-0. The longest winning streak in the series was Michigan with 14 games from 1916 to 1929. And then Michigan State had 4 games. That's cute. From 1930, I shouldn't say that. I'm sorry. If there are any State fans watching, I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. From 1934 to 1937. Yeah. So there you go. Oh, this should say the Paul Bunyan Trophy. People at Team Rivalry, we've got to change here. The trophy section should say the Paul Bunyan Trophy. See, we're always updating. That's why we do these podcasts. All right. So looking at some stats here. So both teams are playing for what they think will be a spot in the playoffs. I think that they need to stop thinking about that. First off, I mean, everybody's going to tell you it's a week-by-week basis. Right now, Michigan's favored by 4. It's a week-by-week kind of thing. You have to take it a week at a time. But all of the news media is saying this is for a spot in the playoffs. It's not. It's for a chance to make it out of the weekend believing that you still have a shot at Ohio State. Okay? Whoever wins this game will be the best that the Big Ten has at beating Ohio State. So, how do I think this game is going to go? Well, I'll tell you. Both teams are obviously riding 7-game win streaks, 4-0 in the Big Ten. Michigan State has yet to play a team with a winning record. Michigan has played a couple of teams with winning records. 2 of those teams have only 2 losses since losing to Michigan. Both of those teams are MAC teams. The other teams are Washington, who sucks this year, Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Rutgers, and Northwestern now. Now, Northwestern was above 500, was at 500 when Michigan played them, and then under 500 after Michigan played them. So there's that. Nebraska was, I think, 2-3 when Michigan played them, I want to say. They were 3-3. So they were at 500 when Michigan played them, and then because of Michigan are now sub 500. I believe Wisconsin was the same thing. Let me just look real quick here. Wisconsin versus Michigan. Yeah, so Wisconsin was 1-3. Wisconsin was 1-1, 1-2. So Wisconsin was 1-2 by the time they played Michigan. And now they're on 3 straight wins against Illinois, Army, and Purdue, which Purdue was ranked when Wisconsin beat them, so that's a good win. Anyway, they now have a winning record, but when Michigan played them, they didn't, so maybe they weren't in their stride yet. Anyway, the point is, I think Michigan State's had the weaker schedule, and I don't know that it's particularly close either. I think Western Kentucky should not have put up that many points against Michigan State. I think Nebraska should have won that game against Michigan State. The only reason they lost is they fumbled it away. Or they threw it interception, rather. Now, that's a very valid part of the game. Michigan knows that well, but Michigan also caused that fumble to happen. Michigan State was in the right place at the right time to get that interception. But both teams struggled against that team. I just want to point out real quick that this Miami game that was supposed to be just a big, that was a big win for Michigan State. They are now 3-4, and they did somehow or another upset NC State, which is a big deal, but they lost to unranked North Carolina and unranked Virginia before that. So, do with that what you will. Anyway, let's go ahead and get a call for this then. What do I think is going to happen? I think it's going to be close. I do. I think both teams will neither team has played a team as good as the other team up to this point. Michigan is scoring 38 points a game. Michigan State is scoring 34. Michigan State is allowing 19 points a game. Michigan is allowing 14. Michigan State, for all intents and purposes, should have lost to Indiana with the way that they were playing. That was kind of crazy. Indiana's not good. Michigan took a second to get going against Northwestern, but Northwestern was on a couple of game win streak. They were doing some good things. Nebraska's been playing everybody tough. They just keep fumbling games away. And Michigan State doesn't really have anyone comparable to Wisconsin because Miami is still sub 500. Western Kentucky may be an equivalent to Northern Illinois, but Western Kentucky right now is 2 and 4, 3 and 4. So they're, sub 500. I think Michigan's going to win this game, and I think that they're going to win it 28-21. Yep, that's what I'm going with. All right, so Michigan at MSU. It's going to be a very, very good game too. It's going to be one of the best games that has happened in this series, and I'm really looking forward to it. That's going to be a fun game to watch. Yeah. All right, so we got all our picks in. It's going to be an exciting weekend of college football. Very, very excited for it. Hope you all enjoy it. Hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week with some more updates on James Franklin's whereabouts and some more picks.